Morning. Yesterday we made the distinction between the first set of Tekios and the second set of Tekios. First ones are called Tekios Demeyushav, and the second one Tekios Demeumad. The main one, interestingly, is the second Tekios. We do the main one, that's called the Tekios Demeumad, that you have to stand up for. The first ones are the extra Minhag Kedei Levalbel as HaSatan, and that's called Tekios Demeyushav because technically you're allowed to sit for that because it's an addition, but we don't sit, we stand up for Tekiah Shofar. Everybody knows the halacha that from the time we start blowing the shofar until the very, very end, the last Tekios, you're not allowed to talk. That's a known halacha. Every rabbi in every country and every shul makes an announcement. No talking between the first Tekiah to the last Tekiah. Why aren't you allowed to talk the whole time? So this is brought first, I believe, in the Rif, and the Rif says that, I have his language here, the Rif says, B'Shem Reish Mesifta. He says it in the name of the Reish Mesifta. Reish Mesifta means Rosh Yeshiva. So we're talking about the Rosh Yeshiva where the Rif was in Spain. Sha'asach la'acher Tekios Demeyushav koidem Tekios Demeumad goyer arimbad. That if somebody talks and after the Tekios Demeyushav, before the Tekios Demeumad, goyer arimba, we criticize him. He's probably talking about the Tekiah himself. That if he talks, and talking is defined as shavoylet tzarech haTekios. Sometimes you have to. It's all part of what you have to do, part of the business, part of the job there. But from there we learn, says the Rif, that in general people shouldn't talk. The Ran, by the way, who's the Rif says, I heard from the Rosh Yeshiva, Reish Mesifta. Who's the Reish Mesifta? So it's probably Rabbeinu Hananel. Probably who that is. The Rif lived in the 11th century, and Rabbeinu Hananel at the end of the 11th century, and Rabbeinu Hananel to the middle of the 11th century, and he was the Reish Mesifta where the Rif was. So I presume there were a number of them. I mean, they kept on getting the Rosh Yeshivas, but I think Rabbeinu Hananel was the prominent one. So the Ran says on the Rif, the Ran is up here on the Rif. Ein muvan madua aser la'asiyach. He says, I can't understand. The Ran, one of the Rishonim asks on the Rif, he says, I don't understand why you can't talk. Just because just because you started a mitzvah doesn't mean you're not allowed to talk through the end. For instance, we make a leisha bas sukkah, and the whole time we're sitting in the sukkah, and nobody says you're not allowed to talk throughout until the end of the sukkah until you leave. Nobody says such a thing. And he also says, interestingly, that when you do bedikas chametz, you make the bracha, you start looking for the chametz, and then you're allowed to talk. Now that's interesting because the Shofar says you shouldn't talk, but you're allowed to talk. That's what he says. Those are his two examples. And third example, which is also very interesting, he says, what do we say when you say hamotzi lechem min haaretz? You're not allowed to talk till benching. So that's the Ran and the Rif, and it's brought in the Tur. So the Taz, and this is what's important for us, Taz explains the Reish Mesifta as such. He says that you can't compare all of the cases that he brought to this case, because this is his main thing. He has three reasons that this is the main one. Since the main Tekios are not the Tekios Demeyushav where you make the bracha, but they're the Tekios Demeumad. You have to remember also that the Tekios Demeyushav and Tekios Demeumad, they have two different purposes completely, meaning the Tekios Demeyushav, Lishmaya kol shofar, you're supposed to hear the shofar. After you hear the shofar, the Satan hears the shofar, it's mevalbel the Satan. That's clear. The Tekios Demeumad that we say during Mussaf, Malchiyos, Zichronos, Shofaros, when we say it to celebrate those three things, that helps to bring the tefillos up to the Shemayim. It's not about us hearing the shofar. It's about being ma'aleh the tefillos to Shemayim. So the Achronim point out they're going in two different directions, those two. So back to our point, if you make the bracha before the Tekios Demeyushav and then you talk before the Tekios Demeumad, so now you've talked in the middle between the bracha and the mitzvah. So the real reason you're not allowed to talk is because the Tekios Demeyushav is not samuch to the bracha. It's enough that you can make a bracha on it. That's kach amru Chazal. But it's not enough that you can be mafsik between them. And when it comes to the Tekios Demeumad, you have to have the Zichronos, Malchiyos, Zichronos, and Shofaros. You have to have all three. That's the mitzvah. So therefore, you can't be mafsik between the bracha of Tekios Shofar all the way until you're finished the last Tekios, and that's how the Taz explains the Reish Mesivta. And the Ran says at the end he says, I don't even understand it, but Hoyel v'nafak mikume the Reish Mesivta, since the Reish Mesivta said it, Rosh Yeshiva. If the Reish Mesivta said it, he said it, and when it came out of his mouth, so we don't talk. The Taz is only explaining that it makes perfect sense why we shouldn't talk. So you're not allowed to talk.